Between 1937 to 1938, while Stalin was preparing to fight Nazi Germany, he made a shocking decision that no one understood. He began executing the Red Army's greatest generals. In 2 years, approximately 1 million soldiers were executed. Even before Hitler attacked, Stalin had destroyed his own army. But why? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for support before continuing the video. Autumn of 1936, Moscow. A meeting was being held in Stalin's Kremlin office. A decision that would determine the future of the Soviet Union was to be made at the table. Among the attendees were People's Commissar of Internal Affairs Nikolai Yezhov, NKVD Chief Genrikh Yagoda, and most importantly, Stalin's right-hand man, Vyacheslav Molotov. The file in front of Stalin had this heading: Purging of Trotskyist and fascist elements in the Red Army. But beneath this innocent-looking title, one of the greatest operations in Soviet history was being planned. Stalin's decision was clear: the Red Army must be made completely reliable. This meant anyone who could oppose, question, or worst of all, was too smart, would be purged. The operation's first target was Marshal Tukhachevsky, one of the Soviet Union's best commanders. Tukhachevsky was only 43 years old, but he had already become a pioneer of modern warfare. Tank warfare, air force coordination, rapid maneuver tactics, all of these had been developed with his ideas. But this is where the problem began. Tukhachevsky was too intelligent, and Stalin didn't like people who were smarter than him. In May 1937, fake documents were prepared at Stalin's order. According to these documents, Tukhachevsky was betraying the Soviet Union by making secret deals with Hitler. The documents were prepared so convincingly that even today some historians still debate whether they were real. On June 11, 1937, Tukhachevsky was first arrested. His interrogation lasted only 3 days and nights. Under torture, he was forced to admit his guilt. He was tried by a secret military court on June 12th. He was executed by firing squad the same day. With Tukhachevsky's execution, the Soviet Union's military modernization program came to a halt. The tank tactics he had developed were archived, never to be opened. Paratrooper units were disbanded. These moves set the Red Army back 20 years. Tukhachevsky's execution was only the first. Stalin began purging the entire Red Army command structure using the military conspiracy as an excuse. The operation was named the Pit Operation because victims were literally being buried in deep pits that were dug. The targets of the operation that began in the summer of 1937 were determined. All Army commanders, corps and division commanders, regimental level officers, military academy faculty members, even military doctors and engineers. The director of the operation was Nikolai Yezhov, the new chief of the NKVD. Yezhov was known for his fanatical loyalty to Stalin. He said, "Let the blood of commanders be on my hands." The military branch of the Great Purge reached horrifying numbers. 3 out of 5 marshals were executed, 13 out of 15 army commanders were killed, 57 out of 85 corps commanders were shot, 110 out of 195 division commanders were executed, 220 out of 406 brigade commanders were killed. In total, 80% of the Red Army's senior command structure was eliminated. But the real executions occurred among lower-ranking soldiers. Between 1937 to 1938, a total of 978,000 military personnel were executed or sent to gulag camps on charges of being enemies of the people. The true scale of this massacre was only learned in the 1990s, after the Soviet Union collapsed. Documents emerging from KGB archives shocked everyone. In a document bearing Stalin's personal signature, these lines appeared: "Every element in the Red Army that does not conform to the Leninist-Stalinist line must be purged. Suspicion is sufficient. There is no need to seek proof." This document showed the extent of Stalin's paranoia. He wasn't even looking for evidence anymore. Being suspicious was enough for a death sentence. The most striking documents were the monthly reports Yezhov sent to Stalin. These reports contained monthly purge targets, just like a factory production plan. This month, 15,000 people will be executed, 25,000 people will be sent to camps. So who were the military victims of the Great Purge? Not just generals, of course, but people from every level of the Red Army. It started with experienced commanders, veteran officers who had led the army since the Civil War, young talents, promising officers, freshly graduated from military academies, technical experts, tank, aircraft, and artillery specialists, intelligence officers, those with knowledge of German military plans, officers of foreign origin, Soviet officers of Polish, Finnish, German descent. The most tragic group was those who were too successful. Stalin saw successful commanders as potential rivals, because the people could love them and they could become alternative leaders. How did the NKVD carry out this operation? The system was horrifyingly organized. Troikas, three-person tribunals, were established in each region. These tribunals consisted of one NKVD representative, one local party secretary, one prosecutor. These tribunals tried 100 to 200 people per day. Trials lasted an average of 10 minutes. The verdict was predetermined: execution or 25 years in a camp. Executions were usually carried out at dawn, in the basement of Lubyanka prison in Moscow, in forests outside the city and other places. Bodies were buried in mass graves, so why did Stalin make such a decision? When modern psychologists analyze Stalin's behavior, three fundamental factors stand out. First, paranoia. Stalin genuinely feared that the army would overthrow him. Second, control obsession. He didn't want anyone to be more powerful than him. Third, strategic calculation. If there were weak army commanders, Stalin would be strong, but the real reason might be different. Intelligence reports Stalin read in the 1930s showed that Hitler would attack the Soviets. Stalin predicted this attack would come between 1940 to 1942. And Stalin may have made this terrible calculation: if strong generals collaborate with Hitler, I lose my throne. Then fighting with weak generals would be better than taking the risk of a coup with strong generals. Who was most pleased by this purge operation? Hitler and German intelligence. Wehrmacht intelligence chief Wilhelm Canaris wrote this report in 1938. The Soviets are destroying their own armies. We don't need to destroy them. The German General Staff reassessed the Soviet Army's combat capability. Reports prepared in 1939 stated that the Red Army is in a finished state and can be destroyed within 6 weeks. This assessment played an important role in Hitler's launching of Operation Barbarossa. When Hitler saw that Stalin had destroyed his own army, he thought, "This is our chance." How devastating Stalin's massacre decision became apparent in the 1939 to 1940 Winter War. The Red Army that attacked Finland experienced a complete fiasco. The Soviets, with 1 million soldiers, couldn't advance for months against Finland, with a population of 3.5 million. The reason was clear: experienced commanders were dead. The army was now led by commanders who couldn't take any initiative out of fear of Stalin, only waiting for orders. Number of Soviet soldiers killed during the Finnish War: 200,000. Finland's losses: 25,000. These ratios showed what state the Red Army was in. This fiasco finalized Hitler's decision to attack the Soviets. When Hitler's Operation Barbarossa began, the cost of Stalin's massacre decision was heavy. In the first days of the war, 1,200 Soviet aircraft were shot down. 300,000 Red Army soldiers were captured. 2,500 tanks were destroyed. The cause of these disasters wasn't technical. Soviet soldiers were brave, their weapons weren't bad. The problem was in the command structure. The new generals had no combat experience. They didn't know modern warfare tactics. Most importantly, they couldn't make any decisions without orders from Stalin. As a result, in the first 6 months, 4 million Soviet soldiers were captured or killed. When the war began full of disasters, Stalin finally understood his mistake. But it was too late now. In the August 1941, Stalin gave the order to release former generals from prison. Surviving commanders were recalled from gulag camps. The most ironic example was General Konstantin Rokossovsky. He had been arrested in 1937 and spent 3 years in a gulag camp. When he was released in 1941, his teeth were broken, his fingers crushed. But Stalin told him, "Save the motherland." Rokossovsky became one of the commanders who won the Battle of Stalingrad. But if he had been killed in 1937, this success wouldn't have been possible. Soviet archives opened in the 1990s revealed shocking details about the scale of the massacre. According to research by the Memorial Society, a total of 1,108,000 military personnel were purged, 681,000 of them were executed, 427,000 died in gulag camps, only 89,000 survived after the war. The most tragic detail was the average age of the victims, 34. Stalin had destroyed the Red Army's youngest and most talented generation. How was this purge operation perceived by the world? Britain. British intelligence was closely monitoring the situation. They thought, Stalin is destroying his own army. This is an opportunity for us. America. America hadn't entered the war yet, but military experts noted that the Soviet army had collapsed. France. When France fell in 1940, it had hoped for Soviet help, but Stalin was busy with his own internal problems. The most interesting reaction came from China. When Mao Zedong heard news of Stalin's massacre, he made this comment, "Revolution devours its own children too." The Great Purge also had female victims. Mostly, generals' wives, female military doctors, female communications officers, military nurses. The most tragic example was Marshal Tukhachevsky's wife Nina. After her husband was executed, she was also arrested. She was exiled to Siberia with her 8-year-old daughter. She died in a gulag camp 10 years later. These women's only crime was being the wife of an enemy of the people. Soldiers who weren't executed were sent to gulag camps. The conditions in these camps were worse than death. In the Seveslag camp in the Kolyma region, former Red Army officers worked in gold mines. Working conditions were so harsh that the average life expectancy was 2 years. When the war began in 1941, soldiers were released from some camps, but most had already died by then. Why did this massacre remain secret for decades? Because Stalin had declared it a military secret. The Soviet propaganda machine promoted this purge as army modernization. It said, old commanders retired, young commanders took office. Western countries didn't ask many questions about this either, because after 1941, the Soviet Union was an ally. The truth only began to emerge after Khrushchev's secret speech. The full truth was revealed by Gorbachev in 1990. How is this massacre remembered in Russia today? In Putin-era Russia, Stalin's image as a great leader is being reconstructed. The Great Purge issue is being minimized, but civil society organizations like Memorial Conduct work to commemorate the victims. In 2019, a monument was erected in Moscow for the victims of the Purge. The most interesting detail, military victims are commemorated in a separate section at this monument because they were victims who were killed beforehand of those who were to defend the motherland. In 1937 to 1938, Stalin had 1 million of his soldiers killed. This decision was one of the fundamental reasons why the Soviet Union suffered 27 million casualties. Stalin's calculation was this: rather than take the risk of a coup with strong generals, I prefer to fight with weak generals. Result: the coup risk was eliminated, but 27 million people died. This story shows us how paranoia and lust for power can result in disaster. When leaders see their own people as enemies, they cannot fight the real enemy. In the end, the Soviet Union defeated Nazi Germany. But this victory came at the cost of the strategies of the generals he had massacred and the 27 million people he had sacrificed. But what about today? Is it possible for leaders not to trust their own armies? Are there no lessons to be learned from history? Perhaps the most important question is this: does power blind people this much? The memory of 1 million soldiers awaits the answers to these questions. Don't forget to support for more videos.